Yeah, you can.
No, that's one.
Yeah.
Everybody all good? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is William Sultan, and I represent the family of Luiz Lorenzo. Obviously, we are extremely disappointed and upset about how the family has been treated here. First, let me put this in context for you all. Apparently, a criminal referral was made to the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office for Enoch Wilson's shooting death of Mr. Lorenzo. That means that the family that you see behind me are crime victims under the law, and yet there was no outreach made to the family at all. No information has been supplied to the family that the District Attorney's Office had the ability to review. There was no opportunity to review that information before apparently it was released to the public, and that is appalling and, quite frankly, against the policies of the District Attorney's Office and state law. That being said, the information that was publicly released shows that Mr. Lorenzo was murdered, and that is outrageous. The District Attorney's Office confirmed that Mr. Lorenzo didn't steal anything from El Rey's Food Market, that Mr. Lorenzo didn't threaten anybody, that Mr. Lorenzo didn't get into a fist fight with anybody. In fact, the opposite is true, that he was sprayed in the face, that he was blinded, that he exited the building, and yet he's being pursued out of the building by a much larger man who takes him to the ground, and then there's a second much larger man attacking him. Your viewers should not view this information in the abstract. They were going to stop Mr. Lorenzo. That's what was going to happen. And he tried to save himself, and that had tragic consequences for Mr. Nolden. And that is a tragedy. But that doesn't justify the shooting death of Mr. Lorenzo in any way, shape, or form. We have serious questions and serious concerns about the District Attorney's investigation in this case. They didn't even bother to do the groundwork on whether the two men at issue here, Mr. Nolden and Mr. Wilson, even had firearms lawfully while they were working at private security. And let's be clear, they did not. The Department of Safety and Professional Services website shows that Mr. Wilson's firearms endorsement on his license lapsed in June of this year. The same website shows that Mr. Nolden's firearms endorsement lapsed in March this year. But that's not the only reason why they were not allowed to carry a firearm. Because the first requirement under DSPS regulations is that there be a substantial need for armed security. There was no substantial need for armed security at this location. There was no history of violent customer interactions that required armed intervention. There is no private security company that would tell their employees to exit the building that they're there to supposedly protect, to go out and tackle somebody to the ground. These are not police officers. And Ms. Lorenzo, confirmed by the District Attorney's Office, did not commit a crime in that store. In the coming days, we intend to get more information from the City of Milwaukee Police Department, as well as from any other source that has information about what occurred, including the Department of Safety and Professional Services itself.
Have you filed a civil rights lawsuit yet? Have you filed any litigation yet against El Rey or the security company?
We have not filed a lawsuit against we have not filed a lawsuit.
Have you guys seen the security video at all of how they say this went down?
We have not. The
Have you asked
information,
for it?
yes, we did. And the information that we have is the information that has been reported by news media.
Have you gotten a copy of the report that the DA decided on the case?
No, we have not. We didn't even get a copy of the
Nothing.
press release.
You think it's a cover-up by Ray and the police department in this incident?
I don't know that I would use the word cover up, but what I will say is that it is indicative of an inadequate investigation.
And I know you say that the two guards weren't lawfully supposed to have a weapon on the job, and you've also haven't disagreed that Lorenzo wasn't supposed to have a gun either.
That is correct. Ms. Lorenzo should not have possessed a firearm. That's true. But I also think that it's also the case that Mr. Nolden and Mr. Wilson were unlawfully carrying a firearm, and Mr. Nolden and Mr. Wilson were the aggressors, not Mr. Lorenzo. So it's not self-defense. You can't create the circumstances for your own defense, which is exactly what they did. If they don't have firearms, we're not here today.
So in a way, you feel Lorenzo was firing in self-defense as well?
Based on what the district attorney's office has said, he was clearly acting in self-defense.
Is that why he carried a gun, for his own protection?
I don't have the answer for that, but I think what is troubling about this case, and quite frankly troubling about the case I talked about yesterday in Racine, is that somehow if you have been convicted of a crime in this state, somehow you're outside the protections of the law. And that is just wrong.
So you haven't been met with any MPD officials or had a meeting basically between when this decision came out, or has there any meeting planned with MPD about this?
The police chief committed to meeting with me last Wednesday, canceled on me, and committed to meeting with me at 3:30 today.
Is that meeting still on?
It is not on anymore.
Canceled again?
Yes.
Did he say why?
It was canceled by me this time.
Oh, and why was that?
Well, at the present moment, we're looking to get more information from the police department, and we were told we could not get that information today. And so the value of that meeting, I think, went down substantially.
Are you gonna publicly demand or request the police chief, the DA, to release all the information and videos while we're here?
I will acquire that information, whether they produce it voluntarily or pursuant to a subpoena.
What about any witnesses? Have you spoken with any of them? Has anyone come forward?
I know that there was another injured party, and I think it's very, very sad, quite frankly, that there was no mention of that, at least in your reporting. I haven't seen the press release again. But you have an injured party that apparently was injured by either Mr. Wilson or Mr. Nolan. We don't know. They haven't said. Apparently also not part of their investigation whether that person's injury warrants any criminal investigation. But presumably that person has been interviewed by police. That would be an expectation.
Did you know that at El Rey, when you enter the store, there's a posting, no weapons allowed, which falls under the concealed carry weapons state law, which they could be liable for that victim, the 41-year-old woman?
Well,
According to state law.
well, to be clear, I don't represent the injured woman, but it is true that El Rey's has a sticker that says no weapons permitted, and it's yet another reason why Mr. Wilson and Mr. Nolden were unlawfully carrying firearms at El Rey's.
Just for, is it Louis or Louise? How?
Louis.
Louis, okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
So what's your next step from here?
Well, we've requested information from the Department of Safety and Professional Services, which we intend to get by the end of the week. We have requested information from the City of Milwaukee Police Department, which we expect to receive tomorrow. We will continue to gather information towards seeking some resolution for the family.
Are you thinking about requesting an investigation by the Wisconsin Department of Justice of how they handle this situation here in Milwaukee? Because it seems like the police department and the chief of police and the DA are violating the rights of this family to know and get information now that the decision has been made.
Well, there's at least one case of notoriety in our country where you have a county district attorney's office being investigated for failing to follow victim rights law. I have not considered filing such a request with the Department of Justice here, but certainly something worth thinking about.
What do you think is the most important piece of evidence? Probably the surveillance video, finding out exactly why this outbreak happened, or if it happened, maybe the cameras inside and outside as well?
We believe that there are outside security camera footage, but we also believe they were wearing body camera on. In terms of the most important evidence, I think it's important to gather all the evidence. That's my principal criticism here. They didn't bother to do that. But I think that looking at the contract between El Rey's and the various private security firm is important. I think looking at Mr. Nolden's registration history, Mr. Wilson's registration history, looking at the training and supervision that they had, examining the reasons why they believed armed security was appropriate at this location to begin with, I think is important. There's not any one piece of evidence that I would say is superior to another. I think we need to have the full context, but at least we know today that the district attorney's office has confirmed that Mr. Lorenzo was not stealing anything, was not hurting anybody, and was not committing a crime. And so you really have to ask yourself, why were these folks running after him in a parking lot? And I would encourage you to contact any private security firm you know in the country and ask them, anyone you know who works in a retail environment, and ask them whether their employer would tell them to pursue somebody who hasn't committed a crime in a parking lot.
Did Mr. Lorenzo, was he carrying the weapon in a bag or open carry, or did he have a concealed carry license?
Again, the information that I have is the same information that you all have reported. I know he did not have a CCW permit. I can confirm that. My belief is that he had it inside a bag. There's no indication that he ever had it out except when he was on the ground with two men on top of him.
Other than the conclusion, that apart, from the narrative that's given by the DA's office, is there anything disputed about their timeline, essentially, of what happened?
Well, again, I don't have the benefit of the information. Normally, that's the kind of thing that you would expect crime victims to have in a circumstance like this. So I don't have that information. What I do know is that based upon where they found Mr. Lorenzo's body, that it seems to match with that narrative. All right, thank you.